Here we are live from Las Vegas, Nevada at SportsGrid Live here at the BetMGM Sportsbook at the MGM Grand Hotel. Excited to be here with you for another hour. We're going to bring in Brady Kannon in a little bit. He'll go over all the lines, the totals, and the props that he is on going into this week. We're going to talk a lot about points being scored in this half. Is it going to be a lot in this game, rather, during this hour? Is it going to be a lot of points? It's going to be a little bit. I don't know, 47.5, a very sharp number. It's going to be discussed quite a bit. It's really going to be up to the individual as you think this game plays out and which way you're going to bet. But a very tough number, I will admit, and it's been set in stone really since it opened. 47.5 is where it stays right now. 110, minus 110 on either side as you're at the BetMGM Sportsbook app or the BetMGM app, which I use regularly. So breaking it down from there, though, and it's something that I often talk about on shows here on SportsGrid, is I think many times NFL bettors feel compelled to pick a side, pick a total, bet it. Those are the big numbers. They are going to see the most wagers. But I will say that you have the opportunity to look a little bit deeper, especially in an isolated game like this. You can look at some first half numbers, second half numbers, even quarter numbers. What does that look like? 3 of the last 10 Super Bowls, scoreless first quarter, including the famous 28-3 Pats Falcons game, the famous comeback, scoreless first quarter. So there were a lot of points scored in that 34-28 game, yet no points at the end of the first quarter. So what does the first half total look like? 22.5 right now. Second half total, 23.5. I'll tell you right now, it's Wednesday. It's Wednesday. We're going to start releasing some bets. I'm not going to save them all till Friday. I'm under on the second half. I think that's one of my favorite bets, and we're going to talk about it. It'll be my best bet of the day. Normally I would tease it, but with Brady coming on, I want him to know where my head is at. Under 23.5, I think, is where we're at for a variety of different reasons, and I talked about it in the previous hour with Warren Sharp. Kansas City's opponents scoring 6.8 points per game in the second half. In the fourth quarter, Buffalo, they shut them out. In the second half against Baltimore, 3 points in the entire second half. And those 3 points, basically a desperation field goal by Justin Tucker so they could try to recover, try to get the ball back quickly and score that touchdown. San Francisco, on the flip side, their second half points allowed, 8.5. That adds up to a total of just under 15.5 points a game. That totals at 23.5. I understand the explosivity of the San Francisco offense and how elite Patrick Mahomes is. I just think that Steve Spagnuolo has proven to be a second half monster and can shut down virtually any game plan. So I'm under 23.5 in the second half. That first half, however, that 22.5, well, we have 2 top 6 scoring offenses in the first half. Kansas City scoring 14.5 points a game. San Francisco 14.8 points per game. So we're effectively at 30 points, nearly 30 points between the two, averaging well over the 22.5. So obviously it doesn't always follow the script according to the stats, but these are the things you start to have to put together. Both teams like to play from in front. Are they going to be very conservative in the first half of their game plan? I don't really see that, but I would also weave in the fact that I've already talked about it on air for a few hours. Isaiah Pacheco is going to be a big part of this Kansas City game plan. And as much as he could have an explosive play or two, I think it's a little bit more about clock management and keeping the Niners off the field with Isaiah Pacheco and not trading a ton of scores throughout the game. But that said, I think both teams will want to strike early on. As we continue down through other numbers, I mentioned the first quarter, 3 scoreless first quarters in the previous 10 Super Bowls. This first quarter total, 7.5. Are we trading field goals? Do we get the field goal and a touchdown? Do we have 7-3 at the end of the first quarter to get you there? Entirely possible. 3 field goals? I don't know. We'll have 3 drives like that. Both teams like to run the ball. We'll try to establish the run. So 3 scoring drives in the first quarter would be quite a bit. Second quarter total, 13.5. Teams get, I've checked each other in the first quarter. That 13.5 second quarter total is something to look at. I think you have the possibility of somebody getting in the end zone there. I don't expect a low scoring first half, but I think second quarter being higher scoring than the first quarter is likely. And a third quarter total of 9.5. The over right now in the third quarter, minus 135 to be over 9.5. I think it's something to look at right now. Teams coming out of the break, do they establish scores early? I'm sitting here saying that I think Spagnuolo does a good job overall in the second half, but does that middle 8, the last 4 minutes of the first half, the first 4 minutes of the second half, does that create opportunities in teams, one of the teams playing more up-tempo? And that fourth quarter total of 13.5, the Chiefs in the fourth quarter this year, 19-1 to the under. So right now it's minus 120 to the over. I think people are always going to want to bet it that way. They want excitement at the end of the game and teams trading scores, but you have to consider how the Chiefs play defense. They slow it down. Steve Spagnuolo has locked up a lot of offensive coordinators this season. So that's sort of where we're at for the major, breaking it down quarter by quarter, half by half. I just feel that when you have a game like this that's as tight as it is, where it's sitting at 2, and the total is 47.5, which means that the number was put out there for it to be bet evenly, and it hasn't swung much in either direction, if at all. It's important to figure out how you think this game could play out and then bet accordingly. Like we said in the previous hour, correlate your bets. You like a high-scoring game? No problem. I'm not going to argue that much with you. I disagree. But a high-scoring game where the Niners get up in front early, which is probably the way that would happen. Niners getting to 17 in the first half, maybe putting up another 17 in the second half, and the Chiefs trying to chase them down all throughout the game. It'd be great. 38-35 Super Bowl last year. We had tremendous excitement and action all throughout the game. Jalen Hurts threw for 1,000,000 yards, and we had a game-winning field goal by Harrison Butker to effectively walk it off for the Chiefs. So when Brady comes back, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the team totals. I'll just spit them out for you now. We have the Chiefs team total at 24.5 and the Niners team total at 24.5. So right down the middle, obviously, with a 2-point spread, you're going to see a lot of even numbers. I was on with Teddy Covers just a couple of days ago on Gabe Morency's show, and he talked about how there's not a lot of positive expectations bets that can be made on a Super Bowl like this. So these numbers are sharp. It's the largest volume bet on any event during the entire year, and the bets are really going to start flowing in over the weekend from the public. The sharp bets are there. They'll still take some position, but the sharp bets have been set, and they're stating that that total is right where it needs to be, and the spread is likely where it needs to be. It won't get back to 3. Might get a 2.5 out there, but it won't get back to 3, not in my opinion. So that's what we're going to talk about here for the next little while, how these teams are going to score. What are the proper bets to make when you're talking first half, second half totals, quarter totals? Is that where we're at? And we're going to be doing that with Brady Kannon at Las Vegas Golfer on X.com. He's a Las Vegas native, so we're excited to talk to yet another Las Vegas native about what it's like for the Super Bowl to come into town. And we'll do that right here at the BetMGM Sportsbook. SportsGrid live from Las Vegas. We'll be right back after this.
If you were going to say, yes, of course, the playoffs started and now the Chiefs are the best team in the league, fine. I think that's wrong. And I think it is going to be close to impossible for the Chiefs to now play for the third week in a row, their best game of the season.
Travis Kelce has put back-to-back games together for the first time all season long, and he's the go-to.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Don't want any distractions. And Vinny, on the eve of these teams getting to Las Vegas, we got a distraction.
We know that there's some family issues, not only with his dad there, but his brother has had a lot of run-ins here that have not looked good for the quarterback. But again, he's a different guy. I think we've understood that.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
They have played terrible football, and yet they always win. Have you noticed? Everyone keeps talking about how bad the Niners suck as they win every week. They win every game, even games they should have. They're down 24-7, and they still won.
Now we have the first excuse. When the Niners lose on Sunday night, they practiced on a bad field at UNLV. They didn't get the proper conditions.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman Trophy
The early line
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell
backup quarterbacks.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
I have
decisions.
no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime time.
Yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
better.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid.
We did.
Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid live from Las Vegas. Mike Blewitt bringing in Brady Kannon. Excited to talk with him at Las Vegas Golfer on X.com and a Las Vegas resident of 30 years.
Yeah, a long time.
How
right?
surreal is it that the game's right down the street?
I tell you, I was just over at Radio Row talking with probably 20 different people, a lot of people that have been here a long time.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I told this story. I remember this is probably 10, 12, 15 years ago, there was a fantasy football type convention thing out here.
Yeah.
And Tony Romo was supposed to be like the star, celebrity guest speaker or what have you. And at the last minute, the NFL nixed it because they said it's too closely related to gambling.
Right.
And then fast forward to G2E, which was out here not too long ago, the gaming convention that shows up here annually. And I was covering that for SportsGrid. And they now have slot machines that have the NFL shield right on the machine.
Right.
So, and of course, the Raiders are here, the Vegas Golden Knights. We're expecting baseball, the NBA. It's just wild. You probably remember, we were talking before we came on air about where I grew up. I grew up in the Bay Area, in the East Bay, and I went to De La Salle High School, which is a football powerhouse. And I ran into Aaron Taylor, who also went to De La Salle. Aaron Taylor, famous offensive lineman who went to Notre Dame, played for the Green Bay Packers. And he was like, once they figured out that there was a lot of money to be made in Las Vegas, everything was okay again. And I said, yeah, you're right. That's a big part of it. So it really is kind of fascinating, the evolution of, being, kind of persona non grata, if you will, or taboo, to being the mecca of the biggest game in football today.
To get a sense of what Brady's talking about with the slot machines, when you walk into Radio Row, the very first thing that you see is a massive slot machine with the Chiefs and Niners logo emblazoned upon it. Right. So it's been a slow burn for me in terms of being able to realize that I don't live here, but I was out here this very set 2 years ago when the NFL draft was here. The Raiders had moved here, then the draft was here, and now the Super Bowl is here. So we've come full circle and really established Las Vegas as an NFL hub for years to come. So I'm glad to have you be a part of it, and every Las Vegas resident or native that we've spoken to feels the same way. It's good for it to be here. Finally got some sunshine today too. Thank you for bringing some with you. It's been raining for days, but I wanted to establish what I was talking about during the Open, which was really having to, in your head, figure out what you think the game plan, what the game script is going to look like. This total at 47, very sharp, but we're trying to figure out high scoring, low scoring. What's generally the way you like to attack it from the start if you're talking totals?
Well, first of all, a little disclaimer. Totals are not necessarily my area of expertise. I typically try and bet sides probably 95% of the time. But obviously, this is a game, an island game, if you will, where you have a ton of options in the prop market.
Yes.
But otherwise, you have to just pick one side or one total. We don't have 16 games on the schedule anymore.
That's right.
So, yes, I've been looking at the total, and it's interesting to see that it really has hardly moved at all. We did see a tick here in Las Vegas up to 48 for a minute. It came back down to 47.5. I talked to a lot of people on Radio Row today, interviewed a number of handicappers, professional bettors, what have you, media types. And the first half a dozen people we spoke with all liked the under. Then we started to get some, leans towards the over. I looked at the average scoring for both of these teams. The Niners throughout the year scored a little over 29 points per game, and it was roughly the same number when they played against playoff teams. And same for the Kansas City Chiefs. They scored about 22.5 points per game, and I think it went to 23 or so against playoff teams.
Yeah.
So you're looking at, 29-23 as a final score. That's 52 points. I kind of think it will go over. Now you look at the shift towards the running game and Isaiah Pacheco for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes.
Obviously the well-established running attack for the San Francisco 49ers. That will tend to take time off a clock. Tick, tick, tick. When you rush that football, keep the ball in bounds, don't throw incomplete passes, and that will tend to lead towards a game that goes under the total. But it's hard to wrap my head around this game being so slow-paced. I think both of these teams can score. Now, San Francisco, you look at EPA per play, basically all the ratings you can find out there, number one offense in football.
Absolutely.
All the weapons. The Kansas City Chiefs, the Niners have played better offenses in the last couple weeks in the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. Will San Francisco's defense's woes, their defense has fallen off a lot ever since Week 11 when Talanoa Hufanga got injured. That really opened up the Niners' run defense. They went in Week 11, they were 5th in EPA per play, and now they are currently 14th.
Right.
So it's real what you're seeing about their defense falling off. It has been a real deal. And particularly, Brady, their inability to get off the field on third down. Their third down defense has been a problem more so the entire season. Yeah. But you're exactly right. Getting off the field on third down has been a huge issue. So maybe this Kansas City offense that's a little bit more sputtering than we're used to will have more success against the 49er defense that has been having some struggles as of late. And we know that the weakness of the Kansas City defense for years, really in the Patrick Mahomes era, has always been defending the run. So I think if Patrick Mahomes and company can have some success on offense and the Niners can have success rushing the football, I think there are going to be points scored. I'm looking at, I would say the game will land right around 50 is my guess. 49 to 51 would be my window. Yeah, which is why that number is so sharp, right? You're analyzing it, I'm analyzing it. I don't think it'll be, I'm leaning towards an under, but not that far under. These offenses are too good to. It's not going to be 2017. Yeah, another 2017 game. I don't think that one's in the cards here. That would stun me. And I do think that to some extent, if you're a Niners backer, you're thinking over. If you're a Chiefs backer, you're probably more generally correlating it to an under because the Chiefs winning a high-scoring game is obviously a possibility, but I don't think that's where they want to be, Brady. Well, I think you're exactly right, and that actually plays into a prop bet that I really like this week, and that is Brock Purdy under 31.5 passing attempts. I like it. You can choose over or under 31.5, and if the Niners are wanting to win this game, which of course they do, I don't think they want Brock Purdy throwing the football 40 times. I think they would love to see him be, 19 of 26 for 230 yards and 3 touchdown passes or whatever it is, possibly an MVP type performance. But I don't think they want him to throw it 35, 40 times. That falls into the Chiefs' hands of, and it would also dictate that if he is throwing it that often, they're probably coming from behind, which they've had to do the last couple of weeks against the Packers and the Lions. But I don't think San Francisco wants to find themselves in that spot again. Yeah, and to give you a sense of what happened to these two teams 4 years ago when Jimmy G was the quarterback, he started out the game 18 of 21, Brady. They had a 10-point lead, 8 minutes to go. How did he finish the game? 2 for 10. He threw the ball 31 times in a game that they lost. So to give you a sense of how this Niners offense, I know it's a different character and a different player, but how this Niners offense tends to operate,
I think you're right. I think it's Christian McCaffrey establishing the run a little bit more and Purdy not having to throw the ball 35 or 40 times. If that happens, I think the Niners would have been trailing the whole game and probably by multiple scores if that were to happen. I just don't see that as being the game script.
I think it's a real interesting number that they put up because it seems high to me already.
Yeah.
And the sports books, despite all the talk you might hear out there that they're rooting for this team or they think this is going to happen, certainly they have an opinion. But those numbers are based off of what they've seen all year and what has typically happened, what is the average number of throws that Purdy makes per game, what have you, and they come up with a number. What the defense is that he's facing, what is he going to have to do? So, but it just seems like that number is high to me. You would think that number might be more around 28 or 29.5. But the fact, and I even spoke with a gentleman earlier today, professional bettor, who said he took it under 32.5. So there are numbers even higher out there, apparently, at least early on, higher than the 31.5 attempts for Purdy.
So he's only gone over 31.5 3 times the whole year, and in the last 15 games, just twice. So, to your point, it's a high number. So expectations from the books that Purdy's going to throw a little bit more than he does on average. So when we come back, Brady's got that whole list of prop sheets. We're going to dive into it. What is he like? What overs, unders, and everything else associated with what we got here at SportsGrid Live from Las Vegas at the BetMGM Sportsbook.
The Super Bowl is set in Vegas. We get a rematch from just a few years ago.
The only consistency in the playoffs has been Travis Kelce.
Brock Purdy, back-to-back weeks throwing one touchdown pass, right? You can't win MVP with one touchdown pass.
I hate the Chiefs, but I bet on them.
This is going to be a game that is played inside a field goal now from a spread perspective.
All that matters is there's one game left, the big game.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
If he doesn't run well, the Chiefs are really in trouble. If McCaffrey doesn't run well, there's a lot more options that you can actually use at that point. And that's how I'm trying to approach it and effectively. But also, Pacheco anytime touchdown, if they're going to score a touchdown, probably going to be him.
That's a good look. Attempts from Pacheco if you believe Kansas City's going to play their style. If you don't, then maybe you go under that total in regards to that.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They reel off the Chiefs, do 21 straight points. They win the game 31-20.
I've been selling this, because of the $23 billion is going to be bet on this game in the States this Sunday. That's insane. And this place, Vegas, they're going to make billions of dollars if the Chiefs don't win.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
That's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Back at the BetMGM Sportsbook at the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. SportsGrid Live, and with Brady Kannon, I'm Mike Blewitt, your host, here for the whole week. I get to sit in this lovely set with this unbelievable background behind me, my favorite hotel here and casino here in Las Vegas. And my favorite thing to talk about is sports betting, and my even more favorite thing is to talk about some prop betting, which is where Brady and I talked about a lot. Every week he would come on In-Game Live, and now SportsGrid Live here. I'm excited to be here with him. We did this remotely all year long. He was virtual calling into the show when I was in the studio, but excited to be here with him and do it face-to-face. So I'll tell you what my first best bet of the week, I played a prop, was Isaiah Pacheco over rushing attempts. I did get it at 15.5. It is now up to 16.5. I still like it. I just think they've really established that he's a big part of what is now a concentrated offense with Pacheco, Kelsey, and Rice. So that's my first one. I'll go to you. How do you feel about Pacheco? Any props there that you like? Or if you don't like Pacheco, anything with McCaffrey?
Well, it's along the same lines what you're talking about. I do see a shift in focus on offense for Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs, moving more so to Pacheco. And why wouldn't you? The guy's pretty darn good. Yeah. Very tough, violent runner, as we all know and have seen in this latter half of the season, really. You know, in this first part of the season, Patrick Mahomes was throwing a lot of passes that were dropped by his receivers. And we were all going, gosh, where is that Chiefs offense that we're used to? And now we have that shift to Pacheco, and obviously it's led to a lot of their success here down the stretch and getting them to this big game. So you like over on the attempts?
Yes, sir.
I think you could go the same direction and go over on the number of yards. I believe I saw the number at about 65.5. It could be up to 66, 67. I would say probably anything less than 70, somewhere around 70 might be about my threshold. But I think he is an over bet on rushing yards.
I'm with you.
As well as attempts. That's really where the Chiefs' offense, I believe, starts and ends these days, and really what gets them cooking. And you know how it is. This has been true in the NFL for years. When you're able to establish a running game, it opens up the passing game, and I think that can tend to make things easier on Patrick Mahomes. We're not seeing as many dropped balls by his receivers and what have you, and I think a lot of that is because of the success that Isaiah Pacheco has had. So I'm with you, and it doesn't mean Kansas City's going to win the game, but I think Isaiah Pacheco will have a successful game. I like over on those two props, attempts and yards, and I'll tell you, I might even go a step further, Mike. I know you like the Chiefs. If you like the Chiefs to win the game, you might even take a stab on Pacheco to win MVP.
Already done, 35-1. So
way ahead of me.
So I've got 3 on Pacheco and everything we just talked about. I think attempts is my favorite bet of the 3. I think it's the one most likely to hit. But if I think he's going to get 17 rushing attempts, I would hope he gets to 67 or 68 yards. Otherwise, it's a long day at the office for the Chiefs. Now, he's had games with a large number of touches where he didn't explode, right? Last week, 28 touches, 24 carries, for 68 yards and a touchdown. Now, if you're looking deeper at Pacheco and those rushing and receiving numbers you'll see on the BetMGM app, that's up to 89, and that starts to get, to be fair to Pacheco, he touches the ball a lot, but he isn't the most dynamic wide receiver. He can catch the ball just fine, but like last week, 4 catches for 14 yards, 1 catch for 14 yards, 1 catch for -1 yards in the previous 3 games. He's only had a few games all year where he was explosive in the passing game. So I'm going to focus on his rushing and rushing yards and that 35-1 Super Bowl MVP. I'm just saying there's a path. It's a long shot for a reason. Patrick Mahomes is his quarterback, and he's the most likely to win the MVP if they win the game. But there's a path there. We just have not seen a running back win the MVP since Terrell Davis in 1998.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. I think it's a good play because we can see that scenario playing out. And I think that's the approach we need to take when we bet prop bets. You how do you visualize this game unfolding? And then you bet your prop bets accordingly. And if you think the Chiefs are going to rely heavily heavily on the run, then Pacheco's got a shot at just about anything. First touchdown, last touchdown, more than 1.5 touchdowns, whatever. You can bet him every which way if you think the game is going to unfold like that. I'll flip it over to the other side and ask you about Christian McCaffrey. I saw a couple of prop bets on him. One was under or over 90.5 rushing yards. I really like the under. Now, McCaffrey absolutely could bust open a 45-yarder and get to 95, 100 yards. Obviously, he's capable of just about anything, but the Chiefs are going to be so keyed on slowing him down. He's an incredible weapon for the San Francisco 49er offense, and not just the player he is, but he opens up everything for everybody else. So there's going to be so much attention paid to McCaffrey. I like his rushing yards total under 90.5, and that number might be a tick or two different at this point. But the other thing is, McCaffrey, and we even saw it in the last game, he might run for 70 or 80 yards and score 2 or 3 touchdowns and possibly be an MVP candidate himself. That doesn't mean he's going to get 95 or 100 rushing yards.
Yeah, agreed on McCaffrey. And he is, in opposition to Pacheco, McCaffrey also sees a lot of touches. He is more of a dynamic receiver in the pass game. So a lot of times when I'm looking at Christian McCaffrey overs, if you're looking at overs, I'm more likely to do the rushing receiving for McCaffrey than I am rushing. But I will say, disclosure, I'm with Brady. Since I'm a Chiefs backer, I can't sit here and say, well, I think Christian McCaffrey goes for $140 and a couple of touchdowns, but the Chiefs win the game.
We know who wins.
Yeah, right. That's the ball game. Like we all know how this is going to all know how it correlates together. So. Yeah, I'm with you. 90 yards is a big number.
It is.
That's Christian McCaffrey, I understand, and he might very well be the best running back in the league, but last week, 20 carries, exactly 90 yards, 17 carries, 98 yards, 14 carries, 64 yards, and then he ripped off a few. He was on fire in December. 103, 115, 145, 93, 114. So he had a big stretch there. But the Niners have also had this funky season, right, where they were smashing teams at the beginning of the year. They had the 3-game losing streak. Coming out of the bye, they started smashing teams again. And then since they played Baltimore, not quite as sharp all the way around as a team. But here they are in the Super Bowl. And McCaffrey and Pacheco obviously going to be a big part of this. So
part of that, Mike, too. Let me interrupt here real quick. You talk about McCaffrey getting to 90 to 98 to 103. Down the stretch, they played some pretty weak defenses, much weaker than the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, we've already spoken about it. Kansas City, their Achilles heel on defense is defending the run. But the last few games, the Packers, the Detroit Lions, the Washington Commanders were in there. They didn't exactly play a murderer's row of defenses down the stretch when McCaffrey was getting those high rushing yard totals.
Right. And to put the rushing and receiving totals out there for McCaffrey. Yeah, so look at this number, Brady. 129.5. Bet to minus 129.
So
that's rushing and receiving.
That's basically saying 40 yards receiving and 90 yards rushing, right?
Yeah.
If I was going to bet a McCaffrey prop over, I'd probably rather take the receiving yards over than the rushing.
Right. So, and I'll see if I can find that one. I'll get that one for you.
It's probably in the neighborhood of 40, I would guess. Receiving 39, 38.
Yards. We'll get it right here. I like to do these live, and I know we just say, well, why don't you have to do your homework? Well, these numbers change, folks.
That's right.
I got to do them live. So, Christian McCaffrey, 34.5 on the receiving. I'm with you. That of all the three numbers, that's the one I like the most. It's for him to get over 35. They don't have a concentrated offense in the way that the Chiefs do, but Christian McCaffrey, big part of the passing offense. So,
I got another one for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Regarding Christian McCaffrey, receiving, rushing, what have you. This is one that I actually played. Christian McCaffrey's first catch will be under or over 6.5 yards. His first reception will be under or over 6.5 yards. I took the under. Because, again, I think that Kansas City defense is going to be so focused on limiting Christian McCaffrey. They have to limit him. You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. We know the saying.
Yeah.
But that is truly going to be one of their major pieces of their game plan. And you can see, and here's another one for you. Brock Purdy's first pass will be incomplete or complete. I see it being complete, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's to McCaffrey. They want to settle this kid in. This is obviously his first Super Bowl, only his second year, in the league.
And he's had some tough first halves recently.
Absolutely. They want to make him comfortable, settle him in, give him a Mickey, give him an easy one right out of the gate, just dump it off to McCaffrey. He gains 3 yards. It's 2nd and 7. Here we go.
Yeah.
There it is. First completion for McCaffrey under 6.5 yards. I think it's very feasible.
We'll talk about pass catchers on the other side of the break, but how about, since you talked about Purdy, any way that you're leaning for Mahomes, any Mahomes props jump out to you? He's obviously a widely bet player, a widely covered player. Is there anything in particular you feel about Mahomes as a sharp bet?
He's a tough one for me to get a read on. I think in Super Bowls past and games past, it was always sharp to bet him over his rushing yards because he has a great ability to scramble. The other thing, I saw a friend, Rufus Peabody, a professional bettor, made a point that, look at these guys to go over their rushing yard attempts because they're less likely to slide in the Super Bowl. They're more likely to risk getting a couple more yards rather than going down to the ground because this is for all the marbles.
No doubt.
And I think that's a great point.
And Purdy had over 50 yards rushing in against Detroit. His legs were a big part of that comeback. And to your point about him not sliding, I was yelling at Purdy to stop diving.
Get down.
Well, stop diving head first. He was putting himself at risk. You're allowed to slide. I would utilize the slide to not take any contact. I took an L on Mahomes over on the rushing yards against Baltimore. He actually had scrambled and got the rushing over, and it got called back from a penalty.
Well, a couple of years ago in the Super Bowl, he went over his rushing attempts, and then it lost it all when he took a knee at the end of the game. Tough beat right there.
Yeah, no doubt. So when we come back, we will focus on those pass catchers. Travis Kelce versus George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Rashee Rice, and everybody else live. It's on the BetMGM Sportsbook.
Tyreek, the first meeting, still had 5 catches. And Amon-Ra St. Brown still went through his number receptions-wise as well. Ayuk is now checking into a bit of the do category here.
We're talking about a field goal or less. The last time we saw a number greater than 5 was way back in February of 2008. It was that Super Bowl between the Steelers and the Cardinals, Super Bowl 43.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect 6th man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Don't want any distractions. And Vinny, on the eve of these teams getting to Las Vegas, we got a distraction.
We know that there's some family issues, not only with his dad there, but his brother has had a lot of run-ins here that have not looked good for the quarterback. But again, he's a different guy. I think we've understood that.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
They have played terrible football, and yet they always win. Have you noticed? Everyone keeps talking about how bad the Niners suck as they win every week. They win every game, even games they should have. They're down 24-7, and they still won.
Now we have the first excuse when the Niners lose on Sunday night. They practiced on a bad field at UNLV. They didn't get the proper conditions.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman Trophy,
the early line,
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell
backup quarterbacks.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time decisions.
I have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
in-game live,
just
prime time.
Yard for a grand slam.
In the bottom of the 4th inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for a 1.5. We got paid.
We did.
information, didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Back on SportsGrid Live from Las Vegas, Mike Blewitt and Brady Kannon talking about player props. We've talked about the running backs, talked a little bit about the QBs and how tough some of those numbers might be, particularly for Patrick Mahomes, who's favored to win the MVP despite his team not expected to win the game, according to the line. So obviously the books don't want to be too exposed to Patrick Mahomes at major plus money. But let's dive into the receivers a little. Brady's got some very interesting props to get into, which I want to get to those shortly. But I think it's important to talk about some of these receivers. We have incredible tight end matchup. Travis Kelce was dominant against Baltimore, which has an incredible linebacking core. I spent some time talking to Warren Sharp today about what the Chiefs may have to do against the Niners in order to get Travis Kelce going. That's really throwing the ball to the outside, maybe a little bit less to the inside. So how about your expectations for either player, Kittle or Kelce, who's such a big part of the Chiefs' offense?
Well, there are a couple more guys. I mean, we've been talking about Christian McCaffrey and Isaiah Pacheco. Kittle and Kelce are a couple of absolute all-pros, as we all know. So, again, it's you can only hope to slow them down, and you're not going to shut them down completely. I think I would expect good games out of both players. I think the prop came out on George Kittle originally that his receiving yards total would be under or over 46.5 yards.
Yeah.
And a lot of people immediately went over on that. Travis Kelce probably more in the neighborhood of 75 yards or so. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes over on that as well.
Yeah.
I know Travis Kelce to score the first touchdown is about 7-1. He's one of the favorites. That's one of the shorter prices. George Kittle, I think, is maybe a little longer at about 10-1. But the point is, if you look at these numbers across your prop sheet, both of these guys are expected to play well, and I don't necessarily disagree. I'm interested to hear what Warren Sharp said, because I feel that the Ravens gave the 49ers a little bit of a blueprint on how not to play against the Kansas City Chiefs.
That's fair.
They didn't run the ball. They ran the ball 6 times. This is the top rushing offense in the National Football League, the Baltimore Ravens, and they ran the ball 6 times. Now, not that Kyle Shanahan, I think, was ever planning to only rush it 6 times, but, that said loud and clear, hey, guys, here's what we need to focus on offense if we're the San Francisco 49ers. On defense, I think the linebacking core is similar. You have Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith in the middle for the Baltimore Ravens. You have Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner in the middle for the San Francisco 49ers. So again, I think they can learn from what Smith and Queen were not able to do effectively against the Chiefs and possibly make those adjustments to maybe slow down Kelce more so than the Ravens did.
Yeah, so just to give everybody the numbers right now, yardage Travis Kelce at 70.5 being bet over -125 on your BetMGM app, and we have George Kittle at 49.5 to Brady's point.
He's gone up.
Shot right up.
Yeah.
Now the under has got a little bit of juice on it at -120, but again, the number has come up over 3 yards from where it started. And their reception numbers, the Travis Kelce reception number is being heavily bet. I would jump on it now. If you're an over better for Travis Kelce, it's at -150 at 6.5, and then Kittle is 3.5 at -160. That is a low total of receptions for George Kittle.
You make a really good point out there for recreational bettors when getting involved in a Super Bowl wagering, weekend and what have you. Maybe you're coming to town or you're staying home, whatever you're going to do. There's probably 2 times to bet the prop bets that are optimal: really early and really late.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, if you're going to do this, get in on it now. The other, and I don't disagree with you at all, the other option is wait until Saturday night, Saturday morning, Sunday morning even, when this influx of people come into town and they all run to the window and they all want to bet Travis Kelce over and George Kittle over, and the general public typically likes to bet on yes and over. you can really find some value late in the game. We talked about the Kittle number. It's at 49.5. By the time they kick off, it might be at 53.5.
I agree. Yeah, that's a fair point.
And then it's really advantageous to come in and take the under.
Correct.
Because now you've got a 6-7 point swing, and you guys know how often these odds makers get these numbers spot on. You might even be able to, let's say you bet over 46.5 early, and now you've got a chance for a middle where you can take under 53.5 late.
Yeah.
So, be smart about how you approach these proposition bets. And like I say, the general public is typically on the yes and the over, but oftentimes you can find the best value on no and the under.
And for those of you out there, again, some of the more casual bettors that are coming in and watching us, I would also take a look at alternate lines.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, the most profitable position I took last year in the Super Bowl, to give you an example, was Jalen Hurts over on passing yards. And I ran the ladder. I thought the number was too low, so I bet him 250, 275, 300, 350, 400. You can run the ladder, and ended up hitting.
You bet alternate numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
So all the way up the ladder, you are just going and betting. You can have 5 bets on the same player. So if you're in the position where you think Travis Kelce blows that number out of the water, you can bet Travis Kelce over 70.5, over 80, over 90. So take a look at those alternate numbers if you're so inclined. So we talked about the tight ends, pass catchers. We got Deebo Samuel out there. I've said it a number of times already, Brady. I think there's a path in which Deebo could win MVP at 25-1. He's utilized in a really unique way by this Niners offense. His total on receptions is 4.5. His yardage is 58.5 right now. So Deebo, I don't think Ayuk is a big part of the game plan going up against these elite corners. So I think Deebo's a big part of it. And then Rashee Rice, the rookie on the other side. He's going to be somebody that's a big part of that offense too. That's very concentrated. Pacheco, Kelce, and Rice are the guys that bring home the bacon for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, obviously San Francisco has more options, more threats, if you will. I mean, you can even go as deep as Kyle Juszczyk, the fullback. I think it's a good bet on Kyle Juszczyk, over his receptions or over his rushing attempts, because I think he will be utilized, I wouldn't say a handful of times, but maybe 2 or 3 times. You might even play Kyle Juszczyk for an anytime touchdown. They're going to have to dig deep into their bag of tricks, both teams, because this is all or nothing. There's no tomorrow after this. So, I think there's probably going to be some things that are a little bit off script. I like to bet, who will score the first touchdown. I think that's always exciting. There's not always a ton of value in that market, and it's hard to land on, but it's more for a fun thing for me, and I think it is for a lot of people. But the approach I like to take with that is, again, going a little bit off script. The backup tight end to Travis Kelce, Noah Gray. I like Noah Gray to score the first touchdown because, again, everybody thinks it's going to go to Kelce. Everybody thinks it might go to Pacheco. If you're the Niners, threatening, knocking on the door, everybody thinks it's going to go to McCaffrey, which it might, but it might go to Juszczyk, or it might go to Jawan Jennings, and you're getting 50-1 on those guys.
Jawan Jennings is the name that keeps rattling around in my head when it comes to somebody catching a random touchdown.
There's another prop I like. I like Jawan Jennings. I think it was over 13.5 receiving yards. The guy typically catches big passes, double digits as far as yardage. He typically catches the ball, as far as I know, and I'm not looking at the stats, but off the top of my head, it seems like the guy typically catches 8 to 12 yard receptions.
Yeah.
So if he catches 2 balls, he probably gets over 13.5 yards.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about value. I want to transition to some of the other props you have because yes, everybody wants their 4-leg parlay to hit at big numbers, and they want to bet plus money all the way across the board. And look, I even just told you, full disclosure, I told you that I'm on Isaiah Pacheco, but I'm telling you it's a long shot, and I'm telling you to keep it reasonable. But you have some other ones where you could take a position even when it's heavily juiced in yes favor.
Yeah, that's the other kind of rule of thumb, trying to do some guidelines here. We talked about the timing of your proposition bets, when the number is bad, when the number is good, when are the most opportune times to make your bets in this type of market. The other, educational point, if you will, about betting prop bets is don't be afraid to lay a big price.
Yeah.
That's what the pros do. Now, it takes a lot more money. I'm looking at one here. Will there be a score in the final 2 minutes of the first half? And it's minus 330, meaning you have to lay $330 to get back $430, winning $100 profit. But you've got to lay better than 3-1. Well, there's a reason it's expensive. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good bet because, again, the numbers telling you what you've experienced watching football, whatever kind of research you're doing, you know that it is very often that there is a score in the final 2 minutes of the first half.
Happened last year. Walk-off field goal by Jake Elliott on the last play of the first half. The last 2 times these teams played, it did not happen. Final score happened in the first half with 5 minutes to go. But it's minus 330 for a reason, which is what you told me during the break.
Yep, absolutely. So, sometimes, and you mentioned it too, the casual bettor wants to, bet a little to win a lot.
Yeah.
They're betting, $10 at plus 180 or $100 at, plus, 2,500 or whatever it is. But sometimes the smarter play is to lay the wood because the odds makers know that this happens more often than not. Now, there's some instances where, we talked about this with prop betting as well. Put together the game script in your own mind. How do you think it's going to play out?
Correct.
And there might be a few diamonds in the rough out there where I've got one here, Mike. Will the game be decided by exactly 3 points? 3 is the most common number in the NFL that a game lands on. Obviously, the spread is 2. So I think it's very reasonable, likely, that the game could fall 3. I actually hit it a couple years ago. I think it was the Bengals and the Rams when the game did fall 3. It's plus 450, 4.5 to 1 if the game falls exactly on 3. Now, that might be the favorite, but that's still a good return. So I think there's a pretty good plus money bet that has a very good chance of happening.
Yeah, and to Brady's point, that last 2 minutes of the first half bet as well. 3 of the last 5 Super Bowls, it actually hasn't happened, but historically, it happens so much. And I think for years,
we're due.
For so many years, Tom Brady was in the Super Bowls, and that's for all the things that Tom Brady was elite at. The thing that he was the best at in his entire career is knowing that I'm scoring right before halftime because we're getting the ball back after halftime. So we're going to score. Their offense is going to be off the field for X number of minutes, and we'll put up 10 or 14 points by doing it. So I like that. So we just got a couple of minutes to go. What else you got on there that's interesting?
Well, the other one is, will there be a score in the final 3.5 minutes of the game? So 2 minutes in the first half is minus 330. Will there be a score in the final 3.5 minutes of the game is only minus 180, a little bit less expensive, but I still like the yes on that. And now, if this was a 10-point spread or a 7-point spread, I think that would be different. But obviously, we're dealing with a 2-point spread here. The odds makers are telling us that this game should be close. And to me, that says there's going to be an opportunity for a game-winning score, a game-tying score, one team trying to play catch-up, whatever it is, in the final 3.5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, we had a lot of that. So I think that's happened 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. God, that's seven in a row, I believe. Maybe Super Bowl 50, the Broncos and the Panthers. Oh, did you say it was the last 3 minutes?
3.5.
So that one happened. So as far back as I just could go in this quick research, it's happened 8 times in a row. We're getting a score in the last 3.5 minutes. One more for me. Eli Mitchell.
Oh, yes. Elijah Mitchell.
Seconds.
And, I said at the beginning I grew up in the Bay Area, so I have a pretty good feel for the 49ers. When Christian McCaffrey needs a break, Elijah Mitchell's going to come in. A lot of people don't realize he is really good. He'd be a starter on a lot of teams.
Yeah.
I got Elijah Mitchell, his first rushing attempt, over 1.5 yards.
How about
if he
that?
gets the ball, he could run for 15.
So Eli Mitchell getting over on that first carry. I like it. He closed out the game last week while McCaffrey couldn't make it. I'll be back to close it out right after this on the grid.
Super Bowl is set in Vegas. We get a rematch from just a few years ago.
The only consistency in the playoffs has been Travis Kelce.
Brock Purdy, back-to-back weeks throwing one touchdown pass, right? You can't win MVP with one touchdown pass.
I hate the Chiefs, but I bet on them.
This is going to be a game that is played inside a field goal now from a spread perspective.
All that matters is there's one game left, the big game.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They reel off the Chiefs, do 21 straight points. They win the game 31-20.
I've been selling this, because of the $23 billion is going to be bet on this game in the States this Sunday. That's insane. And this place, Vegas, they're going to make billions of dollars if the Chiefs don't win.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I'm digging deep, fellas. I'm digging deep. Christian McCaffrey minus 220. Donnie, how could you do that? The price point is way out of control in this. Keep it simple. The goal is to win money, not to outsmart everybody.
Mahomes is minus 140 to throw 2 touchdown passes. And if he's going to, every single thing suggests a wide receiver will haul in at least one, if not both.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
That's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live here at the BetMGM Sportsbook. Thanks for joining me for these last couple of hours. Thank you to Warren Sharp. Thank you to Brady Kannon for joining me, going through all the numbers that we need. It's time for my best bet. I'm giving you one each day. I'm giving you one right now. Second half total, 23.5. Let's go under. Why? I'll give you some establishing statistics here. In the second half, the Kansas City Chiefs have been scoring only 7.6 points per game and allowing their opponents just 6.8 points per game. Very low numbers, really the lowest scoring second halves in the league. Chiefs 6-14 to the over this year, and their fourth quarter unders 19-1, so very low scoring second and halves. And San Francisco, their second halves this year, now they are the highest scoring second half team in the league, 14.1, but allowing only 8.5 points per game. So we're seeing a trend here where you add all those numbers together. 23.5 is a pretty big number. And I understand that Super Bowls can start slow. Again, 3 scoreless first quarters in the Super Bowl in the last 10 years. I just feel like there's an opportunity here for Steve Spagnuolo to show people why he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the league and slow down this San Francisco offense, or utilize that rush game with Isaiah Pacheco and the Kansas City Chiefs to keep San Francisco off the field. So obviously when it comes to sides and totals, those will be the most bet. I like to split it up and go first half or second half. In this instance, I think we get a higher scoring first half. I would lean towards betting that first half over. But when it comes to all the totals in this game, the one I'm going to focus on again, that second half total under 23.5, and the Chiefs establishing that second half defense. So thanks again to Warren and Brady for providing us with all that information. I think you got a sense from everybody being on the show which way we're leaning. I'm leaning towards the Chiefs, Brady leaning towards the Niners. I think Warren is with me in being a Chiefs lean, and this second half total of 23.5 being under will certainly align with my game script and the way I see this game playing out. Again, live here from the BetMGM Sportsbook all week. We'll bring you far more. Hopefully you've enjoyed all the content thus far. Lots more where that came from on the grid from me, from everybody else. We'll be right back on the next show. SportsGrid live from Las Vegas.